Is going over the cliff the best option for Democrats? Our next guest thinks so. Joining us to give us his theory on why going over the cliff is the solution to solving the debt crisis, Howard Dean is a former governor of Vermont and a CNBC contributor. What's going on, Hody? How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. You know what? We've talked when you've been in studio about parts of this, and I sort of knew you'd feel this way, and I've told you, you know, we can do a lot with the deficit if we went back to the Clinton-era tax rates. But they were supposed to sunset, and it's just never a good time, it seems like. And if they do, 3/4 of the deficit is gone if they were all to sunset. Is that part of your rationale?
Well, it's not just the Clinton tax rates, where we had a pretty good economy under Bill Clinton.
Right. Well, different spending rates, too, back then, Governor.
And well, that's right. But it's also cuts in defense, which we haven't had for about 30 years, and it's cuts in human services, which, of course, as a Democrat, I'd rather not do. But I think everybody's going to have to put something on the table in order to get where we need to get. Yeah, I think this is the best deal for the country. We are going to have a recession. We go into the CBO thinks, and I agree with this, that we're going to have 1.3% negative growth for 2 quarters, and then we'll go back and end up with a slightly less than 2% growth rate for the year. But look, we're not going to get out of this without some pain. Anybody who thinks we're going to get through the deficit problem without having to do some sacrificing is wrong. And what this does, in my view, as a Democrat, is it distributes the burden of the pain fairly. That is, that we go back to the Clinton tax rates for everybody, not just for rich folks. And we had a good economy under Bill Clinton. We go back, we cut some defense spending, which we know is higher than it needs to be. And we cut some human services, things like Head Start, which I wish we didn't have to cut. But this is going to have to be some sort of a compromise. I think this is the best deal Democrats are going to get.
And I know, you know, I can think like you at times because, you know, you're smart, you're a doctor, all these things. You're not going to...
I'm also a deficit hawk, Joe.
You are a deficit hawk. And Howard, I know Obama won the election, but in this country, don't you need the House to vote on something to make it law? And if they just say no to the 39.6 on the high end, if you just go over the cliff, it's going to 39.6. There'd be no discussing it. It's going there.
Well, let's be fair about this. I mean, what I'm proposing is not neither the Republicans or the Democrats like, because not only does it go to 39.6 on the wealthy, which I support, but it also goes back to what people were paying when Bill Clinton was president for the middle class. And the truth of the matter is, no matter what people said in the election, you cannot solve this deficit problem without everybody paying more taxes,
right.
Not just rich people.
You
That's
can go to 100%, not 39.6.
Well, not go to 100%.
You'd like to. I mean, in a perfect world, I know you'd like to go to 100%
yeah,
on
right.
the 2%, but you're not going to be able to do that. But
only on television personalities.
Yeah, you go from raising like $80 billion a year, which on $1 trillion deficit is like kissing your sister. And you go from $80 billion to like what, 700, 800 billion if you let them all expire.
Yeah, we should let them all expire. And I think the economy is much stronger than it was 3 years ago. Look, do I think this is painless? Absolutely not. But any politician who tells you we're going to get rid of the deficit in a painless way is not telling the truth.
We keep pretending that there never needs to be any pain, and we just keep extending and kicking things down the road, and we're going to be okay, and then it just festers. I mean,
and the good part about this is we don't need a vote from the House. So if you want to get obstructionist, it has to be my way or the highway. Too bad. The vote's already been taken. The Republicans have already agreed to this. Let's just do it.
What do you think, Governor Perry? I don't know. It does mean job losses, Howard. And but you said we go down to 2%. That's what we did for 2012 anyway. We're still at 2%.
There's a better way.
Okay, here's a better way. Listen up.
There's a better way.
This guy governed a real state, Governor.
Let's see if there's a better way for that everybody can agree on.
All right. Well, let's see.
And I guess that's really what's at hand here is Howard. There is a great model for making the hard decisions, for allowing the taxes to remain low, and that sends the message to the business community that we're not going to take more away from you than what we already are taking. As a matter of fact, keep the taxes low, and it's the spending and the regulatory climate that has got the business community incredibly concerned, as well they should be. There is no stability Howard, there is no predictability out of Washington, D.C., other than there's going to be gridlock and there's going to be continued spending and there's going to be continued taxation. I mean, the message that's being sent out of Washington, D.C. Right now is that we're not going to deal with this. We're going to let this thing go off the cliff and point, stand in a circle and point to the left and say it was his or her fault. And that is absolutely irresponsible. I think Americans are looking for some leadership here, and people who understand economics and understand how to run in this case, the United States of America. But again, I go back to, we have made this work in the state of Texas, and if the last decade is an example of what would happen to America if we put these policies into place, it is that the growth that's going to occur will be substantial. That's how you pay off the deficit.
We don't talk about growth anymore, Governor. You really don't either.
Well, look, I think the Texas economy is to be admired for its growth. It has done a very good job. On the other hand, you also have 22% of your children with no health insurance, 26% of your adults with no health insurance. So Texas, I think, has had great economic growth, but there's also a lot of things about Texas that other states don't particularly admire. Now, my point is, I take issue with you about the tax rates, because the fact of the matter is 60% of the deficit in 2019 is caused by the fact that the Bush people cut taxes without paying for them by cutting spending. So if you want to try to do this whole thing by cutting spending, be my guest, but you're not going to have many Democratic votes. The fiscal cliff was agreed to by Republicans and Democrats. Now nobody wants to pay the price. I say let's go ahead and get this done. The fact is, it's actually a slope, not a cliff. We've got to get this done. I'm serious about deficit reduction. I don't think you can talk about deficit reduction without more taxes and cutting spending.
You think the White House is ready to? Do you have people there with a wink and a nod, Howard, that say you're right?
I don't really know. I mean, they couldn't possibly say that. They're in the middle of a negotiation, and so we'll see what happens. But I believe that the country will get through this. There will be some pain in the next year. And the other thing I believe is that Wall Street, who's moaning and groaning about this, is actually going to do much better. Because Rick, this is something I agree with Rick about, is certainty is critical for the business community. Yeah. Now, we can disagree about the regulatory stuff, but the fact is, if we do this, if we go over the cliff, tax rates will be at a certainty. You can say they'll be too high, but nobody was saying they were too high when Bill Clinton was president of the United States, because we had the strongest economy we had in about 100 years.
Well, I think we had a strong economy, Howard, because that was the leftover from the Reagan years. That's what we were enjoying. Is what Ronald Reagan helped create, and Bill Clinton got to ride that wave.
Well, Internet had something to do with it too. Yeah.
Hey, Howard, we spoke with Bank of America's Brian Moynihan yesterday, and one thing he laid out that I hadn't really thought of is that, he has a lot of big business clients that are clients of the bank, and he said that what's been happening, just this piecemeal government where we kind of push things down the road, we make short-term agreements on things, that has had a huge impact in terms of the uncertainty on small businesses in particular. He said at this point it's too late to change anything for 2013, but if we continue to get some sort of a short-term deal that pushes things into 2013, we are then talking about hiring plans and spending plans for 2014 that are at risk.
That's, again, a part of my argument for going over the cliff and getting this done now, getting the uncertainty out of this. Everybody's going to know what the tax rates are. They're going to know how much defense spending there's going to be. They're going to know what the human services cuts are. We've got certainty. If that's my fear, is they kick the can down the road. They'll get half the deficit reduction, and then half of that will be and accounting gimmicks.
Exactly. They'll never have. They'll do 500,000, go up 2%, a couple of loopholes, and put off any cuts in defense and sequester.
And you'll be right back here in another 6 or 8 months. I think we ought to just take the medicine right now.
Can we
Everybody
rise
will
above?
Have certainty.
Is going over the cliff? Can we call that rising above, or do I need a new button?
I think we just need. This is the bipartisan compromise that was made. Now both parties are trying to back out of it. Now let's just get the damn thing done and move on.
Wow, it's scary. All right, Governor Dean.
It's scary because you agree with me, John.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, it's funny the way you go out far enough on both sides, and you end up.
It does bring certainty, and the certainty is that we're going to be in worse shape than we even are today when we go off that.
I think Einstein said that, Howard. You go out far enough, and you come out and you meet on the other side.
That's right.
The curvature of space. Thank you.
are both hurtling through space towards each other.